All right, let's look at some questions here. Jim Samples, God bless him, has been such a help for me over the years, and especially in the last several days. Went to all the trouble to keep all this stuff organized and classified and stuff, and made it easy for me to find. But anyway, yeah, guys, this country's in real trouble here. Here's Jim's questions. Back to the movies. Why not? A movie paradigm shift, and don't beat me up for it. Like you, I love the movie It's a Wonderful Life. However, I heard many years ago that Frank Capra described the movie as more of a reflection of socialism. At least that was the intent, i.e. Bedford Falls being nearly overrun by big, fat, uncaring capitalist banker who cared nothing for the individual or the small business, eventually turning Bedford into capitalist Potterville, where everyone fends for themselves, and in the end, the community rises arm in arm, coming together, socialism to beat capitalism and big bankers back. That was supposedly Capra's intent, but it didn't quite work out that way. I like our version better, but I fear it can be seen both ways. I would like to see evidence that that was Capra's intent. Frank Capra made a bunch of really pro-American movies. And by the way, It's a Wonderful Life is not my favorite, and neither is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. My favorite Capra movie is Meet John Doe. And by the way, just this second like a lightning bolt occurs to me, Meet John Doe is something that I should really see again pretty quickly. If you haven't seen it, it's about a guy who stumbles into the spotlight, and they start these John Doe clubs for, they're just highly noble and good clubs. And somebody sets him up in such a way that it makes him look like he's basically completely done the exact opposite of that. And the guy is completely, he's utterly abandoned, and he just falls into disgrace and so on. And it's a powerful movie. I need to see that again. Gary Cooper, and who doesn't like Gary Cooper? So here's the thing, Jim. First of all, whether or not it was Capra's intent, it does matter. I'd love to tell you it didn't matter, but it does matter. But that's not something that comes up as subtitles in the stories. Secondly, somebody told me, and I think they made a pretty compelling case for it, although I don't remember all the evidence for it, but somebody said that when you get right down to it, Ronald Reagan didn't come here to protect us against left-wingers and socialists. He came to protect us against crony capitalists. And the argument was, and is, and I think is actually quite a good argument, was that if you didn't have bad capitalism, there would be no need for socialism whatsoever. This is why the intersection of government and business, I cannot think of any example where it turns out well. I know a lot of people said, you're giving too much credit to Elon Musk. He's taking government subsidies. I suppose that's true. Well, I don't suppose it's true. It is true. I don't know about the case with Tesla. I'm going to leave Tesla out because I just don't know. I just don't know the answer. But some subsidies for his SpaceX program. My feeling on this particular case is that the U.S. government has a national interest in being able to get to the space station that we put up there. And if the only way we can get Americans into the space station is to ride with the Russians, especially with how things have been going lately, I'm sorry to say, then this is an appropriate use of government money, getting a space transportation system in the national interest for not only for the use on an international space station, but I'm sure, I have no doubt whatsoever, and people out there must know details about it, I don't, that SpaceX is doing some defense work. So the way I look at it is they're paying for a service that needs to be provided. But in any event, put that aside. It seems to me that every time that that business really gets in the weeds in terms of morality is when it gets too big, and especially when it gets involved with the government. When the great book, and its name has slipped my mind, The Myth of the Robber Barons, by the professor whose name will appear in just a moment up here, who works at Hillhurst College? Hillcrest. Anyway, Havenhurst? It's just slipped my mind. Anyway, basically what he was saying is that there are two different kinds of capitalists. There are entrepreneurial capitalists, and there are I don't know if he used the word political capitalists. But basically, the argument is that there are companies that immediately, once they become successful, they petition the government for specific contracts. They petition the government to make sure that they're the only people that get the contracts. They try to lock out the competition. And these are the people that use, is it Eric Blake? Oh, sorry, no. These are the people that use the government to protect them from other competitors. These are the political capitalists. And then the entrepreneurial capitalists are the ones who understand that the market is actually the strongest thing. And so these are the people that don't want government protecting them. And the book is filled with examples of one railroad versus another railroad. The steam line owned by Commodore Vanderbilt, I think it was, and all the rest of it. Burton Folsom, thank you very much. Stout Cat, that's the guy. He's a brilliant guy. And also David Wellman and whoever's coming next. His entire argument was that there is a species of crony capitalism. Mercantilism is a better term for it. That basically says, I make this product, I'm going to sell it to the government, and the government's going to provide laws to make sure that only I sell it to the government or to my clients, and no one gets to compete. I don't call that capitalism, and if it is capitalism, it's certainly not free market capitalism, which is what I believe in 100%. So, Capra can warn against the excesses of political mercantilism and this kind of rapaciousness that some corporations have shown without necessarily being a socialist. I mean, it seems to me that George Bailey runs a bank. I mean, he's not running a charity. He's not running a soup kitchen. He's running a bank, and it's a small bank, and it's a family business, and he's trying to do the right thing and so on. Potter's kind of a cartoon figure in a way, and you'd think, wow, it's just an exaggeration. And then you look at some of the things that Enron did. What do you say about that? People say, well, do you not see how evil this is? The corporations are evil. I see that this corporation is evil, and I don't think there's any other word for it. When you have these executives giving themselves millions and millions of dollars that are coming from their employees' 401k funds that have just evaporated because the company's gone out of business, there's no other word for that. That's just plain evil. But that's certainly not the standard of how businesses are run. And I think you probably would find, if you were able to look at it, I bet you'd find that the percentage of honest corporations is much higher than the percentage of honest people relative to their the population of number of corporations versus the number of people and so on. So as far as It's a Wonderful Life goes, I would be sad to hear that he was actually saying, hey, socialism is great, but you can say that Potter's kind of capitalism is bad and evil and not be pulling for socialism, and that's certainly the intention, or the intent rather, I got off of It's a Wonderful Life. There is a great deal of disgust about Potter's form of capitalism and cutthroat business practices, and I share that disgust. So, I don't really know. But it seems to me that might be a reach, unless he came out and said so. If he came out and said so, I'll be disappointed. But I will say this. It's one thing to be a socialist in the 30s and 40s, especially even earlier. But even in the 30s and 40s, you could believe in this illusion and be guilty of nothing more than wishful thinking, or maybe even higher than that. But certainly by the time you're into the 70s and 80s, and there's no question about the damage that it's done. That's why they kept so much of the news from the Soviet Union secret. That's why Walter Duranty was such an effective leftist. He basically put the entire prestige of the New York Times behind the fact that everything in Russia was just swell. And he knew it wasn't. It didn't stop him because it agreed with his philosophy. And in Duranty's case, people were dying. They weren't just being slandered. They were being starve to death. And he enabled that starvation to continue because he not only didn't cover those atrocities, he also covered them up. So, yeah. Okay,